representative of our new generation of heroes. He's a sergeant, U.S. Army, and he served in Iraqi freedom. He served in Macedonia and Kosovo, if I got that all correct. So he's been around the world down there. And I'd like him to come up and give us a little talk of things he ran into. Thank you.
Just be a moment while I set up. I have my speech written down, that way I don't run long, as I'm prone to do. So, thank you all for having me here today, and thank you all for coming out to today's ceremony. And I do see some of my friends who are citizen soldiers from the Army Reserve that are out in the audience today. Thank you also for spending your day with us. So when Bob first invited me to speak here today, I began to think about how often I've been here, sitting where you all are now. It was 21 years ago when I first started attending this ceremony. When I first started, I was a little bit younger than the choir is right now. So I've been here almost every single year since, excepting the years when I was overseas, of course. I was first invited to this service by one of my neighbors, Mary Leonard. I'm sure that many of you here know her and her husband, Oscar. I was looking forward to beginning high school, and Mary stopped by the house to invite my mother and I to sit with her here at this event while Oscar was in the honor guard. I have to admit, I didn't particularly want to come, but I was raised to be polite, so I agreed to come. Mary filled something of a grandmotherly role in my life, so spending an hour or two with her seemed only fair. Over the next 3 years, Mary would continue to drop by and work a reminder and invitation into our mid-May discussions. And I never was quite able to tell her no. I seem to remember wondering if she had the house under surveillance, leaping out of the bushes at just the right time when I would be the most pliable. Those first few years when I came to this service, I didn't really understand the importance of Memorial Day. To me, Memorial Day marked the last push in school, when final projects would come due and teachers would struggle to hold our attention. To me, Memorial Day marked the beginning of summer, the imminence of sunny days, late nights, no homework, and time to relax. To me, Memorial Day was a herald of the freedom that I would soon enjoy. Little did I understand how true that is, or how my understanding of that would evolve. My attitude toward this holiday first began to change in the year 2000, my senior year of high school. My mother had allowed me to enlist in the United States Army the previous December. She was not happy about my volunteering, but she was proud of my decision. She raised me to value honor, integrity, and personal courage. She taught me by example the importance of duty and selflessness. And by allowing me to enlist, she showed me that she trusted me to make my own decisions and that she respected my right to choose my own destiny. Now that I knew I would be joining the ranks of our nation's defenders, I truly paid attention to the ceremony and began to consider why we, as a society, take a day to remember our fallen service members, though I did not get far in my deliberations. I was still young, still full of the sense of invulnerability that every teenager seems to have. I knew that I would see the world, meet great people, do great deeds, and come back with a chest full of medals and pride. That Memorial Day marked, instead of freedom from responsibilities, the freedom to start the career of my choice, the freedom that comes with transitioning to adulthood. That Memorial Day also marked the end of my time as a civilian, a mere resident of this nation, and the beginning of my transition into a true citizen, placing the success of this society ahead of myself, because survival without courage and honor is not enough. The following year was an eventful one for me. I joined the Army and experienced the pride of contributing to something greater than myself. The United States was in a period of relative peace in 2000, but any student of history knows that peace is both a nuanced term and a temporary condition. A nation that advocates for freedom everywhere, for everyone, is a nation that will draw resistance from evil. While I was in basic combat training, the USS Cole was attacked, and 17 sailors lost their lives. While I was wrapping up my advanced individualized training as an intelligence analyst, a Chinese fighter collided with the United States signals collection aircraft, and the 24-member flight crew spent 10 days as captives on Hainan Island. These incidents drove home the reality that, regardless of position or assignment, no one is ever safe when standing as a guardian of freedom. My first Memorial Day since joining the Army was spent contemplating this, while enjoying the sunshine and watching the American flag wave over German soil. I spent several hours considering what it would mean for my mother to receive a flag on my behalf. I was beginning to understand the importance of this day of remembrance. My second year in the Army was another one filled with personal growth, and for my perception of this holiday to change. I had my first trip to the Balkans, working with NATO forces to help end a civil war in Macedonia. Seeing the aftermath of a war opened my eyes to some of the horrors that most Americans are spared because we fight our wars far from home. During a later tour in Kosovo, my vehicle was ambushed by smugglers wanting to protect contraband that we weren't even looking for. 6 enemies were killed, 2 were wounded and captured, and sure enough, they lost their cash. Later, I was back in Macedonia and helped lead a quick reaction force assisting European civilians who signaled to us that they were under attack. That Memorial Day, spent in a combat zone, was more of a celebration than a remembrance for me. I acquitted myself well in 2 missions and even earned a medal for my efforts. No one in our forces were killed or wounded in either of those engagements, a credit to our training and discipline as American soldiers. Another year, another Memorial Day spent in another foreign land, still watching our flag fly proudly in triumph, those stars and stripes, a beacon of hope to the downtrodden, and a promise of strength against evil. The second spring of my service was a definite high point in my life. Visions of a long and storied career filled my thoughts. The summer of 2002 and into the spring of 2003 was quite a different experience. I completed my last tour in the Balkans, where I had my first taste of combat, and returned to the now dull routine of garrison life. I went on some training exercises with 5th Corps, helping them prepare for their combat missions to come, and building a friendship and a relationship that would last a lifetime. And the invasion of Iraq had happened, bringing quick victory, but not without tremendous cost. Many Americans gave their lives to prosecute that invasion, including those 2 dear friends. In a year, I had gone from the peak of my life to a new depth of despair. I spent the invasion working extra hours in my office in Germany, preparing intelligence reports for the National Command Authority. This helped our deployed forces by sparing them some of the paperwork bureaucrats and officers love. And it gave me a unique perspective on the many differences that our activities made. My inexperience, though, kept me from seeing through my sorrow and anger to really care about the big picture, to see the answers to the questions that were haunting me as I carried the weight of service. Why did we intervene in other nations' conflicts? How was any of it worth anyone's lives, much less American lives? How much American blood were foreigners really worth? These questions would haunt me for the next few years. And those next few years passed by, thanks to my anger and my grief, in something of a blur. I was reassigned from the 66th Military Intelligence Group to the 5th Special Forces Group's Military Intelligence Detachment. With 5th Group, I deployed to Iraq 3 times. Each was a different adventure, and each helped me understand the significance of this holiday. The first deployment was punctuated with the transfer of governance from the United States occupational government to the Provisional Iraqi Government, a term I developed for the resulting acronym that I was quite proud of, and the Battle of An-Najaf shortly thereafter. There, I had the pleasure of serving alongside Marines fighting to retake a city that Iraqi forces were content to leave in the hands of insurgents. There, I experienced the difference that one dedicated rifleman can make, for better and for worse. I witnessed horrors that evil visits upon both itself and the innocent without discrimination. And I lived the gamut of the emotional range of the American fighting man. This was the first field where I saw extended battle. American heroes fighting to destroy their enemies and to bring their brothers home. Cool detachment was used to engage enemies that had no idea that we were even there. But barely controlled rage was there to overcome potentially overwhelming odds. When the firing was done, I saw men rendering aid to foes that would have tortured us to death because of the uniform that we wore. I remember feeling astonished at how those Marines combined reluctance, frustration, and professionalism into a call for a medic to keep those foes from dying. It was a stark contrast from the cry that carried above the sounds of battle, combining that same professionalism with urgency when an American was wounded. Most of all, I remember how, no matter that Americans were also being wounded, these Marines never stopped helping those wounded enemies stay alive. When my second tour to Iraq came, I ended up spending the entire time on a single major installation. My major assignment during this tour, beyond the routine work one would expect of an intelligence unit, was working with the Americans to help the Iraqi leaders develop their own constitution, to develop the government that they have now. My past peacemaking and peacekeeping experience from the Balkans served me well here, but most of all, I had the opportunity to spend hours each day really learning about how our invasion impacted the lives of the Iraqi people, what they wanted, what they hoped for, and what they aspired to. Working with senior officers and civilian officials, I developed a new perspective on the intents behind the invasion, what was considered a success, what was considered a failure, and what was still up in the air. It's very easy to attribute simple motivations to complex issues. During this deployment, 23-year-old me learned just how nuanced life is, and that nothing is as simple as it appears. My third tour in Iraq was something of a blend between the two previous ones. Like the first deployment, I left the wire fairly frequently, growing from my home at LSA Anaconda down to various garrisons around Baghdad. Like my first deployment, enemies took the opportunity to try to add new holes to me. Like my second deployment, I spent most of my time working a more political role than my job usually entailed, giving me an opportunity to help shape the development of the occupation. Also, like my second deployment, changes to the rules of engagement kept me from retaliating at those bad guys trying to give me scars that I didn't particularly want, and that was a situation that frustrated me no end. I worked hard during that deployment trying to influence changes toward what I saw as right. I spent as much time trying to understand the virtue of not delivering total disaster as the response to an attack, any attack, on an American. After that third deployment to Iraq, my sixth combat deployment in less than 7 full years of service, I was finally given a year off from deployments. That spring, in 2007, I came back here for the first Memorial Day in years. Gone were the days of looking forward to a summer without responsibilities. I came back a battle-hardened non-commissioned officer, fully aware of the price paid for a day most people spend barbecuing and looking for summer sales. I understood better than most the importance of taking the time to honor those heroes who gave that last full measure of devotion to keep us all free. I had seen the world, met great people, done great deeds, and came back with a chest full of medals, just as I knew I would, if done differently than I ever could have imagined. I certainly was proud of what I had done and who I had served with. But upon reflection, I found that I had no better idea of what freedom meant to me. I still didn't understand the why behind why we fight. It would take more than my last year of service to come to understand this why, but I did eventually come to it. During my service, I met people from all over the world who joined each branch of our armed forces for a variety of reasons. Some joined out of a sense of duty, eager to give their all for our nation. Some joined because they were bored and directionless at home and thought that military service might be fun. Some joined because they felt trapped by poverty and saw the military as their only way out. Some joined because they aspired to be American citizens and saw military service as a path to that citizenship. Many joined because it was the right thing to do. The American military has been different from any other military in the history of the world. When you look at the armies of the past, we see mercenaries out there fighting for pay. We see levies pressed into service to expand a king's domain. We see raging hordes stealing what they can carry and burning what's left behind. We see fanatics celebrating as they spill the blood of those who worship differently. And we see common folk just trying to keep those other forces at bay. But the American soldier, sailor, airman, and marine, something new, something that brings hope that mankind will eventually elevate itself to its next epoch. Americans go to war to set others free. The First Continental Army was a multinational force fighting for the right of 13 separate nations to rule themselves. During the Civil War, the Union ranks swelled with abolitionists eager to end the blight of slavery. During the World Wars, we fought to liberate the conquered peoples in Europe and Asia. In these modern conflicts, we spread concepts such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the apparently radical idea that women are people too, to those who either never had or have forgotten these values. When Americans pick up the rifle, we expand those fundamental rights that are essential to our concept of ordered liberty to wherever we go. There is evil in this world. I have seen it and I have fought it. Evil that oppresses, that kills without conscience, that governs by fiat rather than process of law. The United States is far from perfect, but our current political climate is a perfect example of how deep the roots of our tree of liberty go. Congress continues to scrutinize the president and his nominees, even though the president is of the majority party. The Department of Justice is continuing its investigations into its own bosses. The courts continue to reason how to apply the Constitution to those laws and executive orders passed. And state and even local governments pass measures reflecting their support or opposition to to what goes on in Washington. It certainly is chaotic, to be sure, but it is also fundamentally American. Where else could this much dissent against those with such power be carried out so publicly? Nations that come close include Korea, Japan, Germany, and Great Britain. All of these are nations where we have long-standing influences, where we spread our values first through war and then through peace. And this brings us at last to the true meaning behind this holiday. At last we come to why it is important to take a day to remember our honored dead. Freedom must be defended, and it is an eternal vigil. Evil can never be eliminated because people have the potential for both good and evil within us. So we will always need guardians. Freedom also needs more than to be guarded. Freedom must be expanded as well. Tyranny anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere. So it is up to those who enjoy freedom to oppose tyranny wherever it may be found. Memorial Day is far more than a day to remember those who gave their last full measure of devotion so that others could be free. Memorial Day is more than a reminder of the high price paid. Memorial Day is a reminder that we should live lives of meaning. According to the Department of Defense, approximately 1.2 million Americans have died just during our various conflicts. Each of us would have to live over 130 years for each hour to be bought and paid for with a single patriot's life. This truly is a debt that can never be repaid. We all owe it to those brave men and women to live lives of honor, to demonstrate our appreciation for their sacrifice. Freedom is more than simply being able to choose. Freedom is choosing to do what is right, even when it is hard. Freedom is sacrificing for others, even when those others will never be able to repay our gift. Freedom is taking responsibility for all of us to leave the world better than it was when we came into it. Freedom is acknowledging that our rights end at ourselves and that nothing can give us the right to oppress another except at the price of being oppressed ourselves. Freedom is understanding that for any of us to be free, all of us must be free, and striving to make that a reality. And that is what American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines do. American fighting men and women sacrifice their chances for happiness, their own futures, so that others might have a better life. American service members, by taking responsibility for society, prove themselves to be true citizens, not just of the United States, but citizens of the human society that we are all members of. As all things do, my time in the Army drew to an end. After more than 8 years of service, Uncle Sam decided that he didn't need me anymore, so he gave me a small pension and sent me on my way. But while Uncle Sam may not have needed my services any longer, I still had service left to give, so I looked for ways to keep serving. It took me a while to find it, but I found a way to keep making this world a little bit of a better place. Now I help fellow veterans transition into civilian employment. If you're a veteran looking for better opportunities, come find me after the ceremony concludes. I'll be happy to give you a card so we can connect up later. If you're an employer looking to hire the very best this country has to offer, again, come find me, and I'll be happy to connect you with my clients. As we draw to an end, I hope that you will spend some time today considering yourself, what you can do to make a difference today and every day. Perhaps today is the day when you reach out to recruiters, to see if you have what it takes to be a guardian of freedom. Perhaps today is a chance for you to inspire others to become more than what they are today, to celebrate and accept the responsibility that freedom requires. I did not come to my dedication to service from a vacuum. My mother, my family, my neighbors, the veterans here that I met when I was, well, your age, all of them inspired me to become the man that I am today. Reach out to our youth, give them a positive role model, and help build the future that you want. Help build the world into the better place it can be. Memorial Day is more than a remembrance. It is a chance for us, the living, to renew ourselves and our commitment to live lives of meaning. Memorial Day is a chance for us, the living, to embrace our freedom, to do the right thing, to make a sacrifice, to make this a better world for all of us. Memorial Day is a chance for us, the living, to embrace the ideal that we are more than just Americans, but that we are all part of the greater society of humankind, and that all of humankind deserves the freedom that we enjoy. It is a chance for us, the living, to shed our regrets from the past and to embrace the freedom to choose again, to choose a better path for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That was very inspirational, and I appreciate it. Couldn't have said it any better or even any closer. Thank you.